Philip, we're here. Thank you. Raining in Amsterdam, raining in London, snowing in London, and brilliant to sort of see you. And thank you very, very much. So we're about to hit International Women's Day, and we thought that one of the most amazing initiatives that we have in this whole area.
This meeting is being recorded.
There we go. So one of the most amazing initiatives for International Women's Day, as far as I'm concerned, in the world of cacao, is something which you spearheaded, which is the Femme Virunga initiative. And given that there's so much going on in Virunga, one of the things I wanted to try and sort of do is to basically get you to say a little bit more about what attracted you to it, what the program actually is, and how it fits into the overall ecosystem of all the other amazing initiatives which are happening out in the Congo, in the DRC, with the Virunga.
Nice. Hi, Spencer. It's wonderful to talk about Africa on a cold day in the north. Since, of course, we in our minds are traveling down south to a region which is the mid and the east of Africa, and it's a mountainous region. It's the Albertinian Rift, the arc of mountains that goes down on the eastern slope of Africa. With lakes, with high mountains, and then sloping from the mountains of Virunga and Rwenzori into the west is the Congo Basin, which collects all that water and then collects it in one of the biggest rivers in the world and sheds it into rainforests. And but we're finding ourselves, if we talk about Virunga, at the very edge between the mountains and those rainforests, and between the mountains and rainforests is the oldest national park of Africa, called Virunga, like one of the volcanoes there. And the image behind me is not from that landscape, but it could look like that. So in the image behind me is Mount Kilimanjaro with the volcano and the savanna and elephants, and that exists in Virunga Park as well. It's not of that scale. It's in a way smaller, narrower. And then at the south tip of the park are the famous mountain gorillas that are home only in two locations in the world, which is Virunga and then further north in Uganda. There's not many of them left. And when I was considering in my UN position to move out of that particular work, and which was conservation work at that time already, so I knew the lay of the land, and I was considering the plan for original beans and sourcing cacaos in order to, develop conservation projects, like to protect forests, to protect wildlife, which can only go hand in hand with making the local population stronger, healthier, the communities more robust. Otherwise, there's always a conflict between the forest resources, the wildlife resources, and what poor people need to sustain themselves. So I was thinking about that in the framework of chocolate. I thought that Virunga would be an amazing place, and I came across an agronomist who at that point had already thought about it and written a plan, because Virunga is a great place for coffee, but wasn't a great place for cacao 20 years ago. And the coffee sector in northern Virunga, which is the province of North Kivu in eastern Congo, imploded because of coffee wilt. And so there was a whole infrastructure. There were thousands of growers that couldn't sustain themselves anymore. And the development organizations that were present were thinking about what are the alternatives. And this colleague of mine had a plan and sent it to me when I was still at the UN, and it was about introducing cacao in that region. And when I read that with my plan for original beans, I thought, oh wow, this could be a really interesting project. This is what I would want to contribute to, like building a cacao sector that protects the park and the animals and the wildlife, that sustains the communities in this region. Of course, we all know that, from sometimes the newspapers, but there is still war ongoing. It's a very conflictuous place. so that whole challenge, in a way, attracted me. And in 2009 we started to raise some funds from the governments, and in 2009 started a big project with lots of agronomists and a local business partner to build a cacao sector. And there was a woman, this friend of mine, Hilde de Beule, who led that whole team. So she had the vision and the plan. She brought the partners together, and essentially she was also the head of the agronomist team that were working in the villages in a very large region, 200 by 100 kilometers along Virunga Park, the whole northern piece. Thousands of growers who essentially were contacted by our agronomists. We built nurseries, we gave trainings. There was no cacao or little cacao, so we introduced cacao. What is the plant? And you plant in the fields, and so forth and so forth. The whole ethic and values of that team and that effort was leave the forest alone, plant on fields that are already been carved out of the forest. And I think for the largest part, that succeeded and is still succeeding. Of course, cacao can be a deforester. You can slash the forest in order to grow another cacao field. So that's something that needs to be controlled. And I think we have done a good job in instilling that ethos of this is how cacao works. And it's not deforestation. It's actually protecting the forest and growing cacao multi-generational.
So you took over fields which were being used before then for coffee? Or for...
Yes. Yeah.
And how did you plant the cacao? Because presumably if it's just small saplings, you needed to have some sort of cover to stop them getting...
Correct. Yeah. So, I mean, that's either if there's still some canopy, then you grow it under the existing large trees. You have to imagine it's for smallholder farmers who have no chainsaws or any of that. I mean, it's very hard for us to imagine poor Africa. It's even harder for us to imagine Congo, because that's another category. The material culture in Eastern Congo is as it was in Britain 400 years ago. And I don't know it in detail, but I would sort of think. And of course, there are things of the modern world like cell phones and some tools that help us to leapfrog certain things, to get data, to organize a team across a large landscape. But for the normal grower, it's his body and nature, and that's it. There's little huts of straw and clay. That's it. If a child gets sick, and has a deadly sickness, the likelihood is that it will die. I mean, it's this kind of life. There are no buffers, and so there isn't. Back to the forest, to cut out a hectare of forest is a year's work. It's a lot of work. So very often you find that the undergrowth has been cut out and the big trees are still standing because there are no chainsaws, and so you can grow under that. Or we did some research on local trees. Many of the growers in that region might have been or might be refugees from the war in Rwanda. And so some of them would probably not even know the use of local tree species. So we did some research and we introduced local tree species and in the nurseries, and then offered those to farmers. You can grow cacao in beautiful multi-strata agroforests, but you have to know what kind of trees are useful for the growers, grow in a certain way, So that's essentially what that team of agronomists did. And as we went along through the years, in 2014, I think I had the first conversation where Hilde, who was overseeing this whole effort, said, you know what, there, I see all these mothers and daughters working in the fields. This is a family effort, subsistence growers. All these women are working very hard, very strong women, physically, like really strong. They work, but when it comes to sales day, it's the man by tradition that take the product and sell it, and therefore get the money. And even if they have a good relationship in their marriage or in their family, it's still the man who then sort of has the first vote on what the money will do and how and so forth. And it's somehow not fair, and it's not, there's sort of a whole, the female domain is just being, suppressed. And then we discussed, that's, she was very passionate about it. And so we said, yeah, great, but how do we do this? This is probably 100 years old tradition, so we can't change that. And one of the ways to do it was literally to empower women in their own right. So rather than telling the man they should, give the money to the women, we created roles for women to earn additional money by training them in small entrepreneurship, by training them in quality management for cacao, which gave them leverage when it came to purchase day, because quality, gets a higher price, at least if we are the buyer. So slowly but surely, those kind of trainings, leadership trainings, which empowered women individually, but also brought them together as a sort of community, that really stuck. I mean, in all the story of our experience in Virunga, which is now longer than a decade, what has been again and again and again so inspiring, and which we try to also transport to customers in terms of inspiration, is how little the Congolese growers have and how much they make of it. And to see that, that this opportunity of cacao growing and trainings. I mean, I have photos that are so touching when you see in these field schools that our team built up, just wooden sort of, sticks with a little thatched roof, just so people could see on wooden benches to have a class. And then you see all these women, and they have a child on their breast, and they're starting to read and write. It's just really amazing to see that.
Amazing.
And it's stuck. It's really stuck. There's hundreds of women by now. There is also sort of train the trainers kind of program where community leader women, train others. And our team of 7 is still there and works with the different communities on different priorities, which the women and the women associations set.
I mean, because it's one of the interesting, I think it's fantastic, this story, sort of, like Coffee Blight, you step in, you give them another chance, doesn't involve destroying the rainforest, because it's actually just using fields which are already established, they plant cacao, and then you spot this opportunity to basically empower women. And you do it by basically not so much taking over the male roles, but by creating new roles which just weren't there before, like, quality control and that sort of stuff. I mean, has there ever been any friction between, the men feeling they're being a bit hard done by and being jealous of the women in any ways, or have you always managed to sort of?
No, of course, there are frictions, and there can be frictions, and I'm sure. But those are more individual stories. I don't think that they're, on a collective scale, because by now this is, hundreds and hundreds of women are already sort of, let's say, in cacao, in a manifest role, including the daughters. I think I don't know, on my visits and in general, I think it's rather been, which it is, seen as an additional resource for the families and communities, rather than a competition to the male men, which of course in certain individual families it might be, and so forth. But I mean, I can tell you stories because we've done interviews with women, yeah, and many of the women, because there has been war. You know, there's many widows
Yeah.
who have 5 children, and I'm not saying that's the standard, but it is obvious that in the stories you read, there are many women that are in fact alone, just because it's those circumstances. So, you know, by and large, I don't think it has led to widespread conflict between men and women
No,
around
I meant
scarce.
more.
No,
I think,
I mean it can be, because we have had rather ethnically tinted conflicts where newcomers in a certain place might have adopted to cacao better than the people who were already there, and then you get conflict. I know we have had cases of that in communities where certain people took on cacao more easily than the others, and then they did better economically, and then there was a sort of grievance of the ones who felt that they were left behind.
but I mean, I think it's just the most wonderful story. You know, you've always had this great, you know, you got into cacao because you wanted to sort of use cacao to save the planet. And every time a bar gets sold, you do plant a tree in the rainforest. And with this initiative as well, you give, I believe that there's a sort of second, you give a sapling to every woman every time one of the Femme de Virunga bars.
Yeah.
And then the Virunga bars,
Yeah.
which is just amazing. And it's just the most wonderful story. And it is working brilliantly.
I mean, the other side is, of course, as an entrepreneur, there is the let's say the philanthropist feeling in me, which is a big motivation. But of course, on the business side, you know, the circumstances we are working in are ultimately built on trust. You know, in an environment as in Congo, but across the cacao tropics, where essentially the growers are very far and remote, socially also very far, economically very remote. They're just, there is no legal system, there is no governance that you can rely upon. Even in Latin America, that's the case. So ultimately, for a chocolate company to build a stable supply chain beyond the opportunism of the world market trading system, which just throws beans, you know, sort of
just commodity
somewhere
cacao,
over the fence. The grower throws it over the fence, and then everybody throws it over the fence, and then it lands in a shelf for a cheap price, and it's shitty. But if you want to have a dedicated supply chain over years with quality, with, you know, a win-win situation, then trust is the one. And so trust starts with giving. And I report now on what we have given, but if you would interview the growers, I'm sure they could report what they've given. You know, their work, you know, their land, their trust, etc., etc. So it's not I don't see it as a one-sided equation. I'm sure also, because you asked me about conflicts, I'm quite sure I'm reporting now that there were no conflicts. Probably there were many more conflicts they had to resolve. Yeah.
But at least you empowered the women. And I think the other thing is, you know, it's a win for everybody, because it's also a huge win for consumers, because, you know, the Virunga bar, the dark bar, just to start with, I mean, it's, you know, it is just the ultimate in chocolatiness. I mean, it's because you picked great beans and then you've taught them how to ferment them. And, you know, unlike commodity cacao, where it's just another ingredient and what people are really going after is the sugar. You know, if you take a piece of your Virunga bar, which I'm just going to go and grab in a sec, it's just delightful. It's just amazing the way that, you know, it releases its flavor. It has the most wonderful wave. It's, you know, and then you've got the Femme, which is, I think it was one of the first 55% dark milk chocolates.
Yeah.
Which was, you know.
Yeah, we felt like we wanted to make a strong milk chocolate. Somehow that we thought this is the theme of women. I don't know, milk chocolate and then a strong, I don't want to be cliche, but we felt like that's sort of, and I really love the I love that chocolate, which is sort of between the milkiness and the dark world. It's somewhere in between, and it's really strong. There's a robustness which I literally can recognize in the women growers there. It's very much a dedication, to that.
But with a hint of sweetness. I mean, which has more added sugar then, the 55% or the 70%?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah,
I suspect that it's the 70%. Ironically,
yeah, I suspect too. Yeah,
I suspect that the 70% has actually got slightly more added sugar to it because you've got all that lovely Swiss milk in the Femme de Virunga.
Yeah.
So have you ever been tempted to try this initiative anywhere else in the world of trying to empower women in the same way?
Not in the same. I mean, I think that this could be, in a way, this could be replicated. Though I have to say that in comparison to all the other origins and experiences we've had, and perhaps that's because of the historic development in our relationships with growers there, the way in which the Virunga growers have adopted cacao, in the way in which the women have empowered themselves within the communities, has been quite special. And there is also there are also numbers, like there are many growers in that landscape. Whereas, for instance, in other places like Ecuador, for instance, or the Arhuaco in Colombia, the sheer number of growers is less. In Tanzania, there's also many growers, but so far that would be an interesting place. By the way, as you mentioned it, I think it would be an interesting one to discuss sort of empowerment issues for Tanzania, for Virunga.
But I wonder with Virunga and Camille and everything, I wonder if actually one of the benefits you had is that you came into the Virunga. Literally there wasn't cacao growing there.
Correct.
You had a coffee blight.
Correct.
You took advantage of that to basically see that cacao would be a great alternative.
Absolutely.
And there weren't all these sort of set stereotypes.
That's right.
And
it's to this. Absolutely, and it's to this day, the remoteness of the region. Literally, there is one road that looks like a mountain bike trail. The other road is through the Virunga, and both go through the Virunga Park to Uganda in order to get the beans out. The other one goes through the park in the north, and there is only militias and guerrillas, and it's very dangerous. So the remoteness of the place itself and the dangers have stopped marauding cacao companies to come in and buy anything at any price. So there is a sort of a barrier to entry, because the market would not, I don't think the free market would not improve the situation. I think, if the game was up, then the first logic would be that growers just sell anything for cash, and who pays cash first is first. And so I wonder how much good that would do. So the remoteness is also kept let's say the manageability in terms of quality standards and sustainability standards higher.
So if it was more accessible, the big fear would be that
it could be. I mean, there's no doubt that Congo is seen by the West African cacao industry as a frontier. No question about that. Whether it's Eastern Congo or the western part of Congo, it's this huge, the DRC. It's this huge country that goes from east to west. But there's cheap labor. There's poor people. There's lots of land. There's a government that you can probably play one way or the other. There's access to the sea. So there, I know for sure that it is, in the in the scenarios of the big cocoa firms.
Yeah, once they've destroyed what little there is left of the rainforest in Ghana and the Côte d'Ivoire, they'll be on the hunt for new lands to have a go at. But in the interim, and in the meantime,
Yes.
we should all carry on with the Great Virunga
Yes.
and the Femme Virunga. And
Of course.
I mean, I think it is the most amazingly, positive story about showing what cacao can do. You can introduce it, you can use it to sort of like solve some of the disasters of war and disease and ravage and everything else, and also how you can empower women. So I think hats off, Philip. Fantastic job to you and the team.
Thanks a lot.
And just thank the women, the Femme Virunga, for all their amazing work and their bars. Okay, so I am going to stop the video now. Hold on a second.
The recording has stopped.
Good. Great. Spencer, if you want, I can send you a few photos, but I'm not sure whether you
definitely do. Okay. Definitely do send them. And it's an amelando, isn't it?
Yeah.
It is an amelando. Yeah. And how did you pick that? Was that Hilda?
Excuse me again?
How did you pick the bean type to use? The bean that you used, the amelando.
Yeah, how we picked it. It's an interesting story there.